All right. Thanks everybody for coming tonight. We have something a little different in store for you. It's going to be more of a panel discussion, as the name probably you gathered from the name of this meetup. It's going to be more of a panel discussion about how the three, myself, David Molina, and Bryan Holman, all got to be in the place that we are. We actually all met, and we'll get into it, but a while back, and each kind of separately made our way into the tech industry. And so I thought, in light of the fact that there's been some layoffs in the industry lately, as well as the, massive amounts of people coming out of boot camps or whatever, trying to get into the industry, that maybe it would be helpful to share our perspectives on how you can or what we did to get to where we're at, and answer some questions and give some insights into how maybe you could enhance your search for your next position within the tech industry. So we can I think we should get started by just sharing our stories, like just our background, education, and then what your current role is. So I guess, Bryan, do you want to kick us off?
Oh, geez. Sure. So hi, everybody. I'm Bryan. I am actually a meteorologist turned data freak, I guess. And I originally wanted to be a meteorology professor, but midway through grad school, my wife and I had our second kid, and we started to ask some really serious questions about how much money, or hey, how difficult it is to get a job in academia, and especially one that pays any reasonable amount for living in a big city, and one where you get to choose where you want to live, and decided that pursuing the academic career just wasn't going to work out for us. So in 2015, I shortly, like a couple of months after this realization, I heard a talk that was talking about how lots of PhDs are getting into data science instead of pursuing the traditional academic route, and was really intrigued by that and kind of made that my sole focus ever since then. So I started learning Python and machine learning with courses from Udemy and Coursera, as I'm sure that you all have probably done, and incorporated as much as I could into my doctoral research. And fortunately, after 7 months of job searching, after I kind of wrapped everything up, I was able to land a job in tech as a senior data analyst, and then I've led an analytics team for the last few years at a healthcare tech company that's now based out of Boston because we got acquired a year and a half ago. And I met Chris and David networking in late 2017, early 2018, around there, as we were all just kind of on this course together of trying to learn Python and break into the tech scene. So that's my educational background, and much to my professor's dismay, I don't do anything in meteorology anymore other than complain when it gets snowy and I wasn't expecting it, even though I work from home, which is just really sad.
Awesome. Yeah. And David, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah. Well, I studied in Colombia. Industrial engineering is about manufacturing. Like, it's all of it related to. I should be working on test line, production line. Just always about logistics and how to improve times and reduce cost and increase efficiency in whatever company that is producing something. So I saw tons of classes of different topics. It was common to hear that this engineering is more, we are an ocean of knowledge just with 1 centimeter deep. That's the joke that we receive for the other engineerings, that they really go deep into these topics. We just surface them, and eventually, if we want it, we go deep into them. So I was fortunate back then that I started working on data, just working in Microsoft Access, Excel, and that's it. It's just Excel all day. And then eventually, working in Access, I jumped to SQL. And then I got to work with Python, but just copy and paste, trigger it, and see what happens. I was programming macros in Excel, but that's why Python kind of made it some senses. But mostly my macros were also the same: copy and paste or record macro, and then fix it. But then, just after working several years on that, I got to move to the US at the end of 2017. That's when I was just new in the country, new with the language. I was gonna get married with my current wife, and she was the one that mentioned, "Hey, go to the meetups around Portland, get some networking in whatever topic you like." And I was like, "Okay." Back then, all the AI was everywhere, TensorFlow, meetups, and all that. So I started going to them. It was mostly to practice my English. I just wanted to hang out and talk with natives. That was type of exploration. And that's when I met Chris and Bryan. We was just getting picks up free for free in those meetups. Then eventually, I would say that going to these meetups, I got the opportunity to talk in them. Just one of those guys, I don't know if you ever met Alt Curry. He runs the TensorFlow meetup. He one day said, "Hey, you should present this topic." And I was like freaking out, totally out of my comfort zone. I literally have to memorize all that. I couldn't improvise in English. I was really bad at it. And yeah, I started just presenting these meetups, getting rid of all those fears. And it opens the door to meet a lot of people. And then, hey, thank you, Bryan. It was horrible. You have to admit it.
No, it was good. It was really good.
And then out of one of these meetups, some kind of like a recruiter guy, someone who runs a contractor company, put me into Kaiser Permanente. And I've been working there for the last 4 years. That's a super huge summary of all this journey.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have to say, I don't have certifications, or I don't have any masters or specializations, nothing. I only have my industrial engineering title back in Colombia. That's
You've
it.
just been riding that for years.
Yeah. Surfing on that.
Right. Exactly. Awesome. Yeah, cool. And yeah, so they've basically, I won't repeat too much of what they said, but I'll try not to. My background, I went to school pretty late and did economics and political science and math in school. Came out with a bachelor's, and I was going to go to grad school. Ended up looking for a job first. I had my son my senior year of college, and so my wife and I had to jump into the workforce, and she got a job first. So I was a stay-at-home dad, and I didn't want all of the stuff I'd just done in school to go to waste, you know, all the hard work. So I looked for some way to apply. I found out I was, you know, pretty solid in statistics and liked it a lot. So I wanted to go into that, and I was doing like time series forecasting and stuff. And so I discovered data sciences around 2016, and kind of I took a lot of courses in it, and just to see what it was and see if I liked programming. You know, I did Code Academy while I was staying at home with my son, and I realized that this is going to be like I made a bet that this was going to be a big thing. So my wife worked while I studied at home, and I kept a pretty rigid schedule, and I can get into that later when we kind of talk about, you know, how we structure our days and how we study and stuff. But ended up same with these guys, going to the meetups, and I wanted to know more about data science and machine learning and TensorFlow and like all these things that were just blowing up at the time. And I met these guys, and And David told me, I didn't know this, that we were like the first people he met, or I was the first person or whatever that he met in the United States, like besides his wife. I had no idea. I was just like, hey, what's your name? You know, like it was so crazy to hear that. I just found this out like not that long, a couple months ago or something. You told me that, and I was like, whoa. But yeah, and so we also they mentioned that we did like Kaggle competition. We participated in that, and then that was, we had worked together. We could go in on Saturday mornings to compete in this Kaggle competition and stuff. And so anyway, I did end up getting a certification. I did a MicroMasters through a website called edX through UCSD, the Data Science MicroMasters, and it was machine learning. It was all graduate level courses that they had turned into this like mini master's thing. They didn't have master's degrees at the time anyway, so it was just kind of like what was out there. So I took that, and then once I finished that, Al Kari, I ended up joining up in a company that he had started, and with another friend of ours, and that was the start of my career. Like, I knew him from the meetups, and he was interested in what I was doing, and it was just a good fit. And so I've been doing machine learning operations. So I don't actually build models or anything like that. Like, I obviously know machine learning and have a pretty strong math and statistics background, but most of my work goes into figuring out how best to deploy machine learning models, working on infrastructure, server administration, Kubernetes, Docker, all of that good stuff. Basically DevOps for machine learning. And so that's been my primary focus. And I do a lot of work and research and evaluating products and things like that, and building products for machine learning operations. And I'm working at a contracting company right now, solving problems for larger organizations or whoever comes to us, right? And whoever pays us, but anyway, so that's what I've been doing for the last, I got that in 2018, so I guess almost 5 years at this point. Crazy, time flies. Yeah, so awesome. Well, yeah, so we're three friends who have all come from different backgrounds and made our way into the industry. So let's get into some questions. By the way, if people have questions, you can feel free to drop them in the chat at any time during this talk, and we'll be happy to answer them. We don't want this to be too formal, if something's on your mind, please feel free. And there's also a slight chance, I'm already foreseeing, that this could go over 6 o'clock. So if you need to jump, that's fine. This is being recorded and you can always watch later, but also feel free to stick around, and we'll try to nail that 6 o'clock, but no promises. We got some talkers. Okay, so when I think it's useful to start kind of before we got hired, right? So maybe talk about when we were studying, right? Going back to that time, and some of our techniques and resources, or whatever you want to address there. I don't know who wants to jump in on that.
I mean, I can. So I guess I studied most people don't have a grad school schedule, right? Like I did in grad school, I did like 4 or 5 hours of research my last year. And then of course, we had 2 kids in diapers. So there wasn't a whole ton of free time, but then I had more time than somebody working a 40-hour-a-week job. So I think what's most relevant is after we moved back to Portland, when I had like 6 months left, just finishing up my dissertation, we were in this tiny apartment with, again, 2 kids in diapers. And so I would wake up at 5:30 in the morning, head to in terms of resources, I would make sure that I would try to focus to the greatest extent possible on one thing a day. So like 2 days a week, I would spend 2 hours applying for jobs, and then I'd study a Python or a SQL or whatever course for a few hours, and then call it a day and go home and bail my wife out of insanity. And then the other 3 days of the week, I would be finishing up with dissertation work. So like writing papers or responding to reviewers or something like that. But I don't know, it's so difficult because there's so many resources out there, and it's really difficult. Like there's even 5 years ago, there wasn't as many, and it still felt like there was a lot. But now, I mean, I bet you could find hundreds of Python courses, hundreds of people on YouTube that are providing all sorts of their thoughts on Python, why you should learn it, why you shouldn't learn it, all these things. So it's just noise. The best thing that's worked in my experience is pick one thing that propels you in the direction you want to go and stick with it to the end, and try not to start something else until you finish that one thing. And it's really hard to do, especially a squirrel brain like me. But I think it's absolutely vital to be able to do that.
And I do think, to jump in on that, I think that's great advice, but not as, I mean, it can be for Python, pick one thing, but just encoding in general. If you feel like there's a certain language that you feel that is better for you, or more, you're more interested in web development versus something from that standpoint, but I just really just stick with one type, because there is so much out there. If you want to try to learn everything, you're gonna get very overwhelmed.
100%.
Yeah, that's a great point. And just to piggyback off that point, when I first started, I said I kind of skipped over one part of my story, and that is I took Microsoft was offering professional certifications in data science and like all these specializations or whatever. And so I audited that entire series, and I was like, wow, data science is awesome. I can't wait, but I need to learn Python. Well, then I went and learned Python, right? I would learn Python. Side note, I would watch Silicon Valley and just code in Python like all day while my kid was just like crawling around on the ground. That was my study technique at the beginning. It wasn't good. Don't do that. But what happened was I ended up being like, well, maybe I could do app development. Oh, I need to learn Java. Oh, I need to learn how to do Android. Oh, now I want to do web development because that's more lucrative. And then I have to learn JavaScript and HTML, I jumped all over the place. And at some point, I came to the exact conclusion that the point David was just making, and that's I needed to focus. And what I had to buckle down and really just like, what I did is I just wrote out a list of things that I think I'm good at, or things that I like. What did I like? I liked like math, statistics. I enjoyed Python and time series forecast, all this stuff. And I came to the conclusion, I was just like, I need to stop. Like I did this for like a year. I mean, this was a while that I was kind of floundering around. And I finally committed to data science. I was like, I'm going to do data science. I'm only going to do Python. And I'm going to pick one course, which was the MicroMasters. I'm going to pick that. I'm going to do that. And that's the end. That's what I'm doing. Because we were thinking we could create some app and cash out. We were going to be rich. And like, you know what I mean? Everybody goes through those phases. And like at some point I was just like, Python, data science, this course, let's go. And once I did that, I just blocked everything else out. And I accelerated forward so much faster in my journey once I did that, because you'll find yourself and you'll hit plateaus in general. Like I know everybody here, you're like, I'm amazing. And then you hit this plateau and you feel like you're not moving forward forever. You're like, is this it for me? And then all of a sudden you reach you find some resource or some book or something that you really like. And then you just, boom, you take off again to that next plateau. So to get yourself off those plateaus, and to get yourself climbing that mountain as fast as possible, just focus. You got to focus.
Yeah, I would like to add that something that helped me was dive into projects. Like that year when I moved here, I couldn't work for a year. So I have barely technically 24/7 free. I couldn't work. I couldn't study officially because all the immigration documents. So I have two options in my hands: just watch Netflix all day while my wife was working, or just sit down and study something. But I didn't know what to study because I was learning English at the same time as learning the programming, all the lingo, all these words, technical words, and all that. So I just put a schedule for me, okay, my wife is leaving at 6 a.m. So at that hour, I'm going to start working. And she is arriving at 5 p.m. That hour, I'm going to start end my work. And then I started just jumping into projects, like, but really commit to them, like really owning them. Like when we were in the Kaggle competition, I didn't know anything. Python was a new thing. All this ML thing was totally new. TensorFlow, this AutoML, these guys in the meetup, like Al or other folks, they were just putting so many things like crazy, and it was like, wow. But then they put me in at just one task: build the generator. What was that? I didn't have any clue, but I jumped in. They gave me this huge block of code, and I started just messing around with it for weeks and dealing with the bugs, dealing with the performance of it, and really owning it, because I was with the commitment, okay, next Saturday I have to show something. I mean, we have to win this competition, and the generator is one of these pieces that makes the difference. The other one was in the meetup. There were another guy, Andy, I think, for Chris, for Bryan, and maybe others here. He's or Rockstar. He got into Google AI and all that stuff. He presented tons of ML meetups and all that. Back then, he wasn't at Google. He was starting his own open source project. He was recruiting some folks, like really like for free. I started working with him in this Python code, and he was putting me tasks all the time, and he was rejecting my code. He was reviewing it really deep. He was saying, no, I'm not going to accept that in my code, or build 3-4 ways of doing that specific function and evaluate which one is the best. And that one is the one that I'm going to accept. It was crazy working for him for those months, because he rejected all of it. He was so picky. But that was the key. Only that project, only that being like, I learned GitHub, I learned automated testing, I learned Python best practices, I learned about performance, tons of different, just in that project. So when I see in this meetup, like at the pilots, when you guys are building these application, web applications or Flask APIs or whatever, if you really go into it, like deep, like really owning the code, like it doesn't matter who puts more lines or doesn't, but if you are just a viewer on the side, you're not learning anything. That's my personal experience. You are just wasting your own time. But if you really commit to the code and I'm gonna push, I'm gonna do a pull request, I'm gonna mess it here, I'm gonna jump into it, I'm gonna get the hardest things to build. I'm gonna build the connection with the database, whatever crazy thing that you think is the hardest, and commit to it. That would put you up to the level, because you get into a mindset. So once you get into a job, you go to with the same mindset. I'm gonna own this thing. I'm gonna be the guy, and that's the key. It doesn't have to be like, yeah, starting so many things across. No, it's just own what you're building. And I would say that that's an amazing opportunity in these meetups, when you can build these projects and work with a large team. That's also awesome. You are with other developers. You are learning all the stuff in a work. Yeah, we have to share code with 5-6 developers. So you are learning all these skills without even noticing. And that was the difference for me. Of working with in these projects. Even I wasn't making any single dollar, and I only have money back then for the buses to go to the meetups. I was totally broke. Yeah, I always say my wife was buying me my underwear, even because I didn't have any single dollar yet. So there were really hard times, but
yeah,
committing to all these projects, that was a huge difference. And right now I'm in a position that I never imagined I was gonna be.
Yeah, and shout out to Andy, because Andy actually helped me get this group started back in 2018. It was like 10 people, and he mentioned the space in the back of this coffee shop over on Southeast Division.
I was there.
Yeah, David was there. That's where they would work on the Gap ML, the open source project that they were doing. But awesome. Bryan, do you have anything to add to?
I can't remember what the original question was.
We started with resources. We kind of got into techniques, and I guess that might lead us into right before, right? Like, so, you know, David mentioned source control, like GitHub, and I feel like there's some essential skills that I didn't even know that I would need. I was thinking code before I got into this job. And now that I'm in the job, code is like a part of the job, but there's so many other skills that you need to be successful, right? You can't just sit in a cave and code all day and expect that you're just going to move up or even be successful in your job. So I guess maybe each of us, and we start with you, Bryan, each of us, like, what's one thing that you maybe wish you had learned or wish you had known in terms of knowledge or skills before you got into tech that you think would have helped you?
Oh, that's hard to limit to just one.
Sure. Well, share as many as you want.
Well, I mean, so again, I'm coming through the lens of data science. And so when I was taking all the online courses, you would think that all data science is machine learning. Like that's what I thought everything was. It was just, hey, you've got this data, you do machine learning, and all of the toy exercises was, classify MNIST, but this is not what it's gonna be like in the real world, but do this problem anyways. Yeah. Okay, now we're gonna use, I can't remember what all the visualization things are, like crush the Titanic data set. Okay, like cool, did that. Where do we go from here? And I even find those courses I'm doing now, it's like, okay, well, count the words in this file. Okay, well, I mean, I don't have a real world application for that. But then I got into I guess quickly I found out in the industry that, like, even though all the buzz in data science at the time was like computer vision and natural language processing, like every company has data needs because they all need to use data in order to make better decisions. But 0.01% of them need a computer that can see things. So there's this huge gap between where all the online courses were going and leading their students and what was actually needed. So what I wish I would have learned at the time was, if you knew how to take like messy data and just say, hey, I can clean it and I can propose, like I can design a final state for this data set that is structured and easy to analyze and answer questions with, and then you can build some visualizations that tell a story and you know how to communicate that. Those three skill sets is like 99% of what I do in my job now. And also being able to, come up with an idea and turn it into a project and break it down into actionable steps. Like those four things, that's all I do. And I still have never contributed to any computer vision code, natural language processing code, never advanced the forefront of those models at all, even though in my head, that's what I thought I would be doing at the time. So I don't know how it is and you guys would know better than this in terms of the traditional software engineering space, what is taught in courses and what you actually do in your day job, but it seems like there's a big gap there. So I would recommend learning the skills that you would actually need, like GitHub, collaborating, breaking down projects, and then, peer reviewing code, pair programming, other things like that you're going to do in your day job a lot more than solving other world problems that you think you will be going into the industry to solve, because there's not many of those jobs out there. DeepMind doesn't have that many jobs available, so the rest of us get to do stuff with traditional businesses,
Yeah, and that's not a bad thing, right? Like there's so many cool problems to be solved besides all these, Chat GPT just came out and everybody's like, this is the right. There's very few people working on Chat GPT. And there's also very few companies that are going to be able to utilize the power of Chat GPT, right? Like most of the companies are still going to need just a forecast for next year's budget or, something to that effect, right? Like it's so getting those fundamentals, I totally agree with that. I guess I can go. There's one thing that I was thinking about today when I was, kind of pondering this was I've realized, especially after my coming into a team at my new company, that people don't utilize or understand the power of the IDE as well as they could. You see people coding in an IDE, but at most they just basically use it as a text editor, and that's about it. And that's primarily what I see. And if they even use one at all, a lot of data scientists are living in Jupyter notebooks 24 hours a day, right? And then they say, let's deploy this, and I'm like, no. Have you tested that Jupyter notebook? And they're like, what's a test? So one of the skills that I think would be super useful, and it sounds daunting, but it really isn't. If you again, it's one of those things, just commit to it, is learning to use your IDE, and that includes for debugging, because a lot of how you learn to debug at the beginning is just like guess and check, and that's such a bad method. Like, it's not efficient at all. You can get there, but it'll take you a very long time. Learning to use things like breakpoints and the built-in debugger in IDEs is so powerful. Like and there's plenty of tutorials on how to do this, right? Even on just like, if you're using VS Code, just go to the VS Code website. It's a very simple tutorial on how to use the debugger. And the more you use it, the more you'll understand why it's so great, right? Being able to step through your code, being able to see the global and local variables, whatever variables are in scope, and all that kind of stuff will help you so much to visualize what's going on in your code versus just trying to think through it in your head. Because a lot of times what happens when you're solving a problem is you think it's one thing, right? And you go down this path, and you go really far down a path that you think it is, and it wasn't that at all, right? And perhaps it would have, once you use that debugger, you would have seen immediately, oh, this variable's wrong, right? But it takes you so long, and you're just inserting print statement after print statement after print statement, trying to find the place where it is. And of course, divide and conquer is a great method for debugging, right? And if you don't know divide and conquer, you split your code in half, and you continue to split it in half until you isolate where the bug is in your code, right? And so you just divide your code up. And if the bug was in the first part of the code, you can ditch the rest of this. It's not down here, and then you focus on this part, and you get finer and finer grain. But coming back to it, I think utilizing the IDE, not to mention the extensions, right? The color coding, just being able to see your code, and all the different extensions that come with it, including for me, Docker, Kubernetes, cloud providers like Google Cloud now have things like Cloud Code, where you can interact with the cloud through your IDE without ever having to leave your IDE. So in development, right, a big thing that I see people doing is context switching, right? If you're in a browser trying to code in a browser in, say, like Databricks or something like that, you're in a browser, and you'll often find yourself just drifting through the internet, and all of a sudden you can't even remember what you were doing in the first place, right? Like when you're in an IDE, I know people are familiar with this, right? If you're in an IDE, you want to stay in one place as much as possible to hyper focus, and like an IDE even has a focus mode, a Zen mode, where it just shows your code, and you can just go, turn on your Skrillex or whatever you listen to when you code, and go for it, right? But hint, I listen to Skrillex when I code. But anyway, I think learning the power of the IDE, just looking, and on top of that, I mentioned documentation. Learn to read documentation. So go get an IDE. I think VS Code is superior to almost every IDE out there. Even if you're using Python and you think PyCharm's great. PyCharm is great, but VS Code is so powerful. And so learning to use that to your advantage can really put you above and beyond, because you'll be more efficient, more productive. And then, learning to read documentation is the thing I always preach. I just say, before you go to Stack Overflow, try becoming familiar with documentation, because you can often find, once you understand how to read documentation, you'll find the answer that you're looking for a lot faster than just Googling and copying and pasting, which I do too, but
Now I would add to all that is, if you really want to get to that senior position, is learn how to swim in issues, in troubles, in bugs. Like, you need to be comfortable with them. That's what worked for me. Dealing with any type of problem, not just coding problem, like, why is my SQL query not running? I'm trying to deploy this table in production. Why it's not deploying? I want to migrate these data pipelines in Azure Data Factory. Why I can't? Or what's the bug? So many type of bugs. And I'm noticing that some of my coworkers doesn't even read the logs. And it's funny because they normally ping me and it's like, oh, David, this fails. And they just copy and paste or send a screenshot of the logs. And it's literally, it says there what's failing. And it's funny, like, did you read that the password is wrong? Or I don't know. Sometimes it's really ridiculous. It's like, why you didn't read that? It's just the laziness because, yeah, it is scary, all these a bunch of lines of logs everywhere. And it's like, oh my God. But sometimes it's most of the times it's not that bad. Like Java logs, there are a bunch, but the only line that matters is the first one. And that's the error. Explicit, just right there. The rest of it is just garbage. So learn to be comfortable with it and be that key member in your team that each time that there is an issue, you are the superhero. Even if you don't know, you are the guy who are willing to, you know what, I'm going to spend my time fixing it. I'm going to navigate Google until the second page if it is necessary. I'm going to go as deep as I can to fix it. So you have to read tons of blogs. You learn, you get used to GitHub blogs. You get used to Stack Overflow. You get used to so many resources over there, and then you learn how to filter them. What's garbage? What's really useful? Sometimes you even learn things that you wasn't even looking at. Like, oh, that's cool how this guy wrote that stuff. I'm gonna keep it in mind for later. But navigating to that puts you into that another mindset, and then you are that key member in the team that everybody relies on. The project doesn't run without you. You are the guy, and that's what put you higher up in if you want to get out of the these more junior roles to reach to the senior levels. That's how I would say this. Don't get afraid of bugs. Just love them.
Love squishing them.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that, and I wanted to.
Can I add one thing?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I would just say really understand coding concepts as a whole, because there's different programs or different styles of doing things, and like source control, there's GitHub, there's TFS, things like that, but it's the same concept no matter if you change companies or management styles change, or they change on the go and stuff like that. So if you understand the core concept of how source control works, then it's easier to switch from TFS to Git or an IDE if you're going from PyCharm to VS Code. And that kind to be able to adapt and change quickly can help you elevate your position from that standpoint. So that's what I would add.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I think too. I wanted to touch on, so people, there was a question of what, there's always the classic question, like, what programming language do I learn, right? And my answer is always just learn one. Like, it doesn't matter. Learn any language, but learn one and learn it really, really well. Don't try to learn 3 languages at once. It's not going to make you more productive. It's not, I mean, you could argue JavaScript, HTML, CSS, right? But I wouldn't exactly say HTML and CSS are a coding language, right? Like, I would say JavaScript is your focus, your coding language there, right? And so learn one, because the concepts, like David was just saying, and you kind of triggered this for me, the concepts are the same across programming languages. So if you learn one, you can easily pick up another. Like, I've had to pick up and code in Go. I didn't know Go at all, but I just went. I was like, oh, this is how Go does it. Okay, perfect. And I just set up Go, and I was going. I don't. Anyway, so So yeah, and then JavaScript, same thing. I've had to do some stuff in JavaScript. I was able to pick it up, Node.js and all this kind of stuff. So anyway, yes, totally agree with that. Concentrate, and that brings us back to that focus, right? Try to focus on as little as possible. Be really good at that thing, and those skills will translate out to all the other places, right? A lot of other technologies. I kind of wanted, in that vein of studying, right, like to bring the conversation over and just ask, like, for what's your favorite resource? Like, it doesn't have to be like a specific website or anything. It could just be like a general resource. But I'm just wondering. I know I have my feelings about it, but what do you guys think about resources? Like, what resources do you find most helpful, or what resources do you find least helpful? What do you use more often than not?
I would say, so my number one is books. And the reason that I love books so much is because it allows you to focus the easiest. Like, we spend enough time in front of screens. That's probably not, that's not a controversial statement these days. And so when you get away from that, you can focus on books. And then as you're reading, going back to what David said, is as you're reading, think about what you can. Good question, Lawrence. I'll get at that. How you can use what you're learning in the project that you're working on, or if you are doing something at work related to software development, there's going to be something that is relevant to what you're learning there. So, for example, right now, I'm learning a book all about data engineering in Google Cloud, because we are Google Cloud users, and there's not as much knowledge there as there used to be, and so, which is great. I mean, so I'm learning tons of different things that are relevant to what we're doing in our day job. But at the time, when I was just trying to not drown while learning Python, everything was about weather research. So I was just learning. So everything was all learning about data analysis in Python, because we were analyzing these humongous data sets and learning how to make API calls to grab data and stuff like that. So it was all books and resources centered around that. And I would say, in addition to so books are great. They help, whatever helps you focus the best. Online courses are really good too. I would avoid podcasts if you're just getting into the field. It's nice. I mean, if that's the only hour of time that you have to spend within this brain space, then just wait until later, because podcasts are interesting, but they're not as actionable as book knowledge is.
Yeah, in that I would add, for the learning process. Well, I back then, and in that years, in 2017, 2018, someone recommended me to take this class in Coursera. It was called Learn How to Learn. Basically, they teach you how the brain works and how the brain learns. And it was cool because I was a mess. Because I normally get afraid of studying. Normally, these topics are really hard. Like, going into ML is crazy with all the statistic concepts, math, linear algebra, whatever. All of it seems like really dark and scary in the beginning. So this class teaches basically repeat as much as possible from different sources. So reading books, if you go to YouTube, Udemy, Coursera, whatever, blogs, each time that you go into those topics and you read a little bit, it's like getting the little pieces of this huge puzzle. And then your brain over the time is adapting to learn those concepts deeply. So it doesn't matter if you didn't got it in the first try. I'm not a genius. I would like to be one, but no. If I have to watch a video 10 times just because it's so hard and I have to, I mean, we live in a luxury time that we can literally return back in a video in the moment that we got lost and rewatch it, or return back to those pages and reread them. It's not like the old times, taking notes and losing half of the class because I got tired of just writing and I didn't know what to pay attention. And no way of repeating the class. So yeah, all these, eventually the brain will make sense of all of it. So right now I just take the approach of, I'm not gonna over stress for it. If the topic is too hard, I know I'll get it. So every day read something about it, read here and there, watch a video here and there, all the time until it's there. The brain magically connects the dots, and eventually, it's how I learned English. It just was something that suddenly was like, oh my God, I can speak and I can understand and all that. But it was day by day, Sunday to Sunday, 24/7, hard immersion. There is no escape for it. There is no trick for it. It's just do it. It's the same with programming or any topic. If you want to learn quantum physics, yeah, start reading crazy every day until someday it will make sense. All those equations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I totally agree with I call it
Oh,
grinding.
also, yeah, if you want to take that class in Coursera, I think it's still there. Learn how to learn. It's really
that's
cool.
such a good course. Yeah.
Yeah, they teach.
It's free.
Yeah, it's free, and they teach you how your brain works, how brilliant people use it, how to trigger creativity. Like they have tons of examples. Even they recommend go exercise, go into a hike, go a walk, swim. That thing about getting suddenly the answer when you are taking a shower.
Yes.
That all of it explains why. It explains how your brain gets hard block, and then when you release that tension and do another activity, your brain is able to connect other dots that you in front of the book for 2 hours couldn't even solve. It was the shower the trick. So they teach you why. They give you the answer on why that happened and how to trigger and unblock your brain. So I highly recommend that class. It doesn't take that long, and it helps a lot with any topic.
That's such a good call out. I totally forgot about that class, and I think I've naturally like I use those techniques, and they just because I took that class, and now I'm remembering that I took that like long time. It's an old class. It's been around for years.
It's really old.
Yeah, it's been around for years. That's crazy. I haven't thought about that for a long time.
The class is learn how to learn.
Yeah, learning how to learn. Maybe can you go find the link, David? Maybe and drop it in chat.
Yeah, let me
see if you can
for
find it. Yeah, cool. Yeah, and we're kind of getting into this area that is one of my personal favorites, and that's not just learning, but how we structure our time to be most productive. And I know Bryan and I have had a lot of conversations about productivity, and there's a lot of stuff out there right now, some great books and that kind of thing. Just to second what everybody said, I also agree with books, right? I don't think that I try to stay away from YouTube videos as much as possible, unless I just need a quick something, right? Like if I'm going to learn a topic, I go books, 100% books. And actually I told I don't know if I told you, David, but I told Bryan about, I call it one book, one podcast, one course, right? So you pick a topic, you find a course on it, you find a book on it, you find a podcast on it. And so that you're absorbing the information in 3 different ways, right? You're getting it visually, and then you're reading it, and you're also hearing it, right? And so you kind of like your senses are kind of absorbing this information all these different ways, and that's really, really helpful for me. And so in terms of that, I wanted to get into like our different methods, like what are our days, right? Like so let's say we're out there, we've done, there's lots of interview topics out there, so I don't want to get too heavy into interviews, but like day to day, right? We all work, right? And we do our jobs. And so I'm wondering, I'm going to skip for now. If people want to come back and ask us about, interview stuff, I'm perfectly happy to talk about that. I just wanted to touch on structuring your day in a way that will make you most productive. One thing that I didn't know, and maybe coming back to that too, is one thing I didn't know coming to tech was that this grind, and I call it grinding, right? And there's this great book called Grit, kind of describes this skill that you can develop of just grinding hard towards a goal. What I didn't realize that it was not going to stop. like that I would have to continue to grind. And literally that's my job every day, is to just learn, absorb, figure out problems. It never stops, right? Even you think that once you get to the job, you're just going to coast. No, it's the same as it was before you got the job. They just pay you for it now, right? And so, so I wanted to get into, I guess I'll start just to kind of set the scene. Like what I've really found, what I found with studying and what I tried to maintain, and it was really hard through COVID. I've had to really come back because I fell out of it a little bit during COVID, but was how I structure my day, right? What techniques I use, because it's so easy to just like sit there for 6 hours and just get lost in code. But at some point, like David was saying, like you don't absorb anymore, and your brain becomes blocked, and you can really spin your wheels on something that if you just took the time to walk away and come back to it, you'd be able to connect those dots instantly. The minute you look at it the next time, it's like, I understand now, right? And so I'll tell you just kind of like really quick what some of the things I do. So like I definitely have a structured schedule, right? Like I utilize a calendar. I do my calendar the night before. I also do it on Sunday. So I plan out major things during the week. And then every night I'll write down what I need to do the next day, both personal and work. I keep it on the same calendar. I keep a written calendar. I don't use Google Calendar. I just use that to schedule family events and stuff. So we have shared calendars. But basically my day is like wake up, right? I read. I found for me reading first thing in the morning, not anything technical, just something I enjoy, to just like relax and ease into my day is so much better than just rolling out of bed and starting to work. Like if I do that, like I'm so tired, I'm so exhausted by the end of the day. So I try to like ease into my work. I do my workout sometimes in the morning, sometimes in the afternoon, depends on my day. But I kind of do things the same way every day, like, and then at 8:30, like I watch 20 minutes of YouTube videos about news and things just to kind of see what's going on. And then I start my day, right? But I'll go for 2-hour chunks. So I break my day into 2-hour chunks. So from like 9 to 11, I'm working, and I take a 10-minute break, doing whatever, doesn't matter, right? Maybe eating. I eat a lot, so especially now I'm working at home. And I take those breaks every couple hours, right? And I take my lunch. I take it, especially when you're working from home. It's so easy to just work all day. So take that time, right? And then in the afternoons, right? They say like in the mornings you can do your most creative. So a lot of times I'll do like creative things, whether that's coding or something like that in the morning. And the afternoon is when I do a lot of kind of my reading or studying or whatever. I find that that's like an easier time for me, because if I try to code in the afternoons, I'm pretty tired by then and my brain doesn't work as well. Get off at the same time every day, right? And so, yeah, the things that I do are calendar, highlight the things, keep the things unhighlighted I didn't finish, so that when I get to when I'm planning my calendar that night, I can see the things I didn't get done. And I leave those on the day before, but so I don't overschedule myself, because I know I still have these things to do from the previous day, right? And I just kind of, that simple technique keeps me on track, keeps me focused. So I just go down my list, right? Boom, 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 boom. Another thing I suggest is doing your hardest thing first thing in the morning. Like if something's hard for you, like you don't want to do it, but there's something really fun for you that you do want to do your hardest thing first. It sets the tone for your day, right? Like you just kind of, it makes your day, like it makes you get momentum in the morning by doing that, right? Like, so I feel like that technique works for me, right? And maybe this stuff will work for you, maybe it won't, but you have to kind of guess or like try things, figure out what works for you. In terms of, David, you really reminded me of something so in terms of figuring stuff out, when I was learning to code, and say I had coding challenges that I needed to solve, I would bang my head against the computer, and I'd get to a point where I just had to stop, right? The time where I solved the most problems was at night when I was in bed. And it was between that space where I'm almost asleep. I would think of that in my head, the code, and I'd realize what the problem is. But I wouldn't go back to my computer, right? Because that's a no-no, right? Because otherwise you're on your computer and then all of a sudden 2 hours goes by and you're like, crap, it's 1 o'clock in the morning, right? What I do is I keep a notepad next to my bed. And I do this anyway for anything. So you're thinking about things right before bed. I write everything down on that notepad next to my bed. I keep it next to my bed. And when I wake up in the morning, I transfer that stuff to wherever it needs to go, whether it's my calendar or whether it's the answer to a problem. Like I write out code, lines of code on that notepad just to like remember what the answer is, right? And so anyway, that's kind of the day that I found that works for me. And I don't know if you guys have any like techniques that help keep you focused and keep you motivated, because it is draining working on this type of stuff all day long.
I would just say, once you get a schedule that works, stay with it and be consistent. And there's a book that I would recommend, The Power of Habit, Why We Do What We Do. And there's a lot of things that I like from that book of, if you just set a habit and you mentally know that it's a good habit, then you can kind of trick your mind and saying, okay, do it for one more day, and then it's just going to be instinct. And then you don't even have to, and you're doing it without even knowing it. And you could do vice versa for bad habits. If you notice what the habit is, then you can reverse it from that standpoint. So I can put a link for the book, but it's called The Power of Habit, Why We Do What We Do.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, David. I know, I think that's like a classic, right? Power of Habit, or is that newer?
I believe so. I think it's like 10 years old or so.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yeah, just would like to answer Alexander's question. I know Bryan is also putting good resources and good answers there. To get to this senior, or I guess it's senior, I don't know, it's a junior role, again, a senior role. It's all about at work, how to be the key member, like you be to be self-efficient, be the key member that solve problems. And also, if you see opportunities of improvement, just work on them right away and don't wait until you get told to work on that, because sometimes even managers, all of that, they don't even know that that's a possibility. So when you have this good idea, like, oh, I can automate this, like for me, a specific case that happened is there were a process that we needed to deploy several components, several pipelines to different environments, the FQA. And the manual process that Microsoft suggested was extremely tedious, and it was going to cause to put a lot of resources, meaning a lot of data engineers to work manually on this, migrating each of the jobs, just a bunch of JSON files. And just knowing how GitHub works, Python, some command line, I got this idea of automating that. And it ended up that it saved tons of money, tons of hours. Everybody was happy. Nobody wanted to work hours on it. So that put me into this top level of, damn, you have a really good idea. So I started getting invited to all these key meetings where they need someone that was thinking out of the box, something that they weren't seeing. So if you have that, just don't be afraid of jumping on that. Don't wait. That's what makes the difference between you staying in a junior position and jumping to a senior position. The other one is when we are seeing applying to these roles, normally it's scary, the list of requirements for it, but sometimes you have the opportunity to jump in one of them. Just do it. If internally in your company they believe that you can fit those shoes, and you read all that, it's like, damn, I don't know if I'm able of doing all that. Once you jump in, yeah, there will be challenges, but you have the mindset, I know how to overcome with them. And then eventually you will feed those shoes. And if you can't, for some reason you born in that position, you at that moment you would have learned so much that who cares? I mean, just being able to be in that position and learn and suffer and maybe spend tons of hours and then seeing it in action, that will put you like in the perspective where you are, what's missing, what should be you working on to really nail it, or maybe you just nail it right away and just stick with it. Like if you feel fear or you feel that you're not capable of, those are thoughts that shouldn't be there. It's hard, but we need to remove them. That's why a lot of people ask me, how you made it so fast, climbing into all these positions. It's like, I don't know, I just jump into all that. I wasn't thinking if it is the right way or in the incorrect way, of if I needed a title, or I was totally out of that. I don't know if it is because the mindset in my country that we are just so free, or and no structure with all this how to do things. But it works out. It worked out really well. And that's what I'm seeing in my daily job. Like, there are always opportunities to shine and learn how to do it and when to do it. Even sometimes I have a brilliant idea. I don't say it to anybody. I start working on that on my side, because I know in the moment that I said that to someone, maybe that guy can steal my idea. When I'm going to release that idea, I have to be like Game of Thrones here. When there is a meeting with a lot of directors and a lot of people and nobody have any clue, jump in and put the bomb there. Nobody can take your idea out, because now all the directors, all the main people know that you were the guy. And then you just solve it, build. You already built it some, maybe. So you are the hero there, and nobody can take credit on that. So everybody is trying to climb that ladder. So be also smart about it. It's not about programming. There are other skills that are necessary to climb it. And be careful with your ideas and all that.
David, it sounds like you're completely integrated into America.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
You made it, buddy.
I learned fast.
Oh,
No, I saw that like some guy had a really good idea and someone else took it, and
yeah,
and this guy goes through.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, what happened? It's like, well, it's just the courage of doing it, right? Like, know how to read the times and when to do it, and those are things that there are no in the books, no in videos. It's just live. It's just how to read your coworkers, how you read the situation.
It's all strategy, man. Yeah. I definitely, I've learned the hard way to hold my tongue at certain times, not just my ideas, but also my one thing that I can say just in general, professional advice. You just made me think of this, is like, your perceived weaknesses, the things that you don't know, usually you're the one who knows what you don't know the most, right? Like, you think that other people think this thing about you, but the less you say, the better. I realized this in my first job. I came in and I didn't know anything. Like, I didn't know anything. And they handed me servers. They were like, be a Linux server administrator. We need to use Docker to put these machine learning models into this. I had no idea. I didn't know Docker. I didn't even know what the cloud was. I had no idea what anything was. I'll put it out there right now. I'm far enough in my career that I'm good now, right? I didn't know anything, right? But I just kind of kept my head down, did what David is saying, in that just dove right in, didn't think about it. I think that has carried through too, in that when you're in a role or anywhere for that matter, like, there's things you want to learn, and then there's things you have to learn. And if you're able to be fluid and just focus on, like, what am I working on right now? Like, right now I'm working on building out a testing suite for this machine learning application we're building, right? I'm only focused on PyTest. I'm only focused on how do we test data. So I'm looking at all these modules on data. I'm looking at what other people have written about testing data. I'm not worrying about anything else. I'm not reading up on things I want to learn, algorithms or anything like that. I do that in my free time. But like at work, it's like, oh, I only focus on that. And then when the next problem comes around, right? Maybe it's a Kubernetes thing. I dive into Kubernetes. I absorb myself in Kubernetes. I only think about Kubernetes at that exact moment. So only worry about what's directly in front of you and keep your mouth shut. Because you don't want people to know. They probably don't know. They probably think you're a genius because they just see you over there doing this. But really, you're Googling, like, what's Kubernetes? Like, you know?
Yeah, that's true. Now, and the other thing, to land in these roles, or at least with a recruiter that thinks that you can be in that roles, is learn how the system works. Like, we are into this AI thing. I'm working right now in recommender systems. So one key thing here is in LinkedIn, these recruiters are using LinkedIn search to find the potential candidates. They just don't go one by one and randomly picking. It's just they put what they need, and the algorithm returns back like a Google search, who fits this position. So what I do in my LinkedIn is I get those positions that I would like to be in, or that I'm interested in, the topics or that. I literally copy and paste all whatever the requirements they have, each bullet point. The ones that I know that I close to them working on them, I rewrite that to my personal experience in what I'm doing and currently doing. So I just left there the keywords, the ones that I know the algorithm matching similarities, content similarities between the job post versus your description of what you're doing matches, and that triggers that the recruiter is going to see me. So all those things, I've always like checking those roles, matching them. Like sometimes I don't know what to write there. So for the ML position, ML engineer, I'll talk with the architects and well, whatever, to get the systems, the platforms ready. So just writing down exactly the same words, tweaking here and there. That will open the door for the recruiters to at least text you. And since I'm doing that, I can see like weekly, even I don't have right now turn on the I'm looking for a job. I have that off. I get, well, before December, right now is not that good, but I was getting like 5, 4, 6 recruiters weekly, all type of jobs, and that you are the right fit for this, blah blah blah, and they explain all that. It's just the algorithm doing its magic. I'm not doing anything special there. If you only put the title of the job, well, the algorithm is not going to associate that with the role. So if you're looking for a role, for a senior role or something related, start matching those words. Play with the algorithm. It's no quantum physics there. It's how it works right now. So you play with it on your favor, and then you have that recruiter interview. The recruiters sometimes they are not that like super knowledgeable on on all these topics. So if easily you can pass them, and then yeah, you will have to face these interviews. What I do is I just take them. I just give the shot. I can't fail them. I failed a lot. I failed the one in Facebook. I failed the one in Microsoft. I failed the one in Amazon. But I know now how they look like, what they ask. I know how that I have to prepare. I know where I'm really lacking of knowledge, what I have to prepare. Yeah, I waste their times and their interviewer times. I don't care. I learn a lot, and I'm preparing myself for that. So later, when I have another opportunity, I nail it. So yeah, it's just a game there, if you want to see it like that. But there is only one way of knowing what they are asking or how that looks like, because there are like 5, 6 interviews, and to get to each of them, it's something that we have to practice. It's not like we just get there and that's it. Some people are really lucky, but once you are there, you will see that now I have to prepare. I have to study these particular things, and then move on from there. So don't be afraid of rejecting or getting reject or a no, or oh, I didn't got the position. It doesn't matter. You learn something from it, and now you know where you are weak, and you can start working on that.
And I'll add into that. So let's say, I guess, hypothetical situation, if you are like just wanting to break into technology or to the tech sector, and let's say you just started learning a language. In terms of timeline, what I would do is focus like 5 hours a week. Like just start there, 5 hours a week. Maybe and maybe that's too daunting, but like an hour a day, and then take the weekends off because your brain needs a break. This is hard stuff. And then build a project over the course of 6 months, and read a book or two during that time to support you. Take a course or two during that time to support your knowledge learning, and then start applying for jobs. One thing I learned really quickly was that, a lot of the recruiting advice online says tailor your resume and a cover letter for each job to which you apply. And I don't recommend that strategy. If there's a job you're really craving, then sure, but really you're just trying to get any foot in the door possible. So when I was doing that right after grad school, I was applying for 5 or 10 jobs a week because it took so much time. And then I ran into some friends and they said, oh no, just spam your resume. And I thought, okay. So I did that, and I applied for hundreds of jobs in a week, and I got 4 or 5 interviews just that week. I was like, well, crap, I should have been doing this the whole time. So, learn everything you can, build something, and then after 6 months, just start putting your name out there. And the worst that can happen is you don't get a job right away. You can probably expect it to take 6 to 9 months. But that means that from 15 to 18 months from now, you could be having a job that might be more satisfying than what you're currently doing.
Yeah, that's experience. Like 6 months to a year, I think is what I've seen from people who think they're ready to get into the industry to actually getting the job. And exactly what you're saying, the most successful strategy I've seen has been people just applying constantly, as much as humanly possible. Yeah.
The other thing is this exposure, like when I was in those meetups, well, right now with COVID and all that, but the ones that we can start returning back, you never know who is on your side. So it could be a recruiter, could be someone just looking for someone, or someone who knows someone that needs exactly what your knowledge. So being out there, it works a lot. Like what held me back then in those meetups, like being new in the country, in the language and all that, was presenting in those meetups. As much of my fears of being in front of ready people and not knowing the language and all that, it was cool, because at the end of the presentation, tons of people were just, hey, what's good? Here is my LinkedIn. Let's share contacts. Let's share numbers, whatever. And then eventually, one of them offered me a job. Hey, I have been seeing you presenting for a while, and you seems really dedicated. And what are you doing? What do you know? I was like, I know Python. I know this and this. And he said, well, let's apply to this job, and I'll help you. Sure. I escaped all the filters, all the recruiters, all the stuff. It was some interviews, but put me into what Bryan was saying, that first position. It was a really low level position. I was just gonna support legacy systems using Informatica. So they hired me with really low payment rate, really bad contract. It was horrible. No vacations, no any benefits, no 401k, nothing, just the pay. And the pay wasn't great. Just checking what other folks were doing at that time. But it gave me the entrance. Once I was in, I was able to prove myself and go to go up the ladder really fast. Like I never even touched the legacy system that they want me to support. I was so like right away into Python projects, and once they saw that I was good at it, they said, oh, we can get someone else for that legacy thing. We want you here. And they raised me the salary, and they really spoiled me to don't go. We want you here. And I've been in Kaiser Permanente for almost 5 years. I'm not right now. I'm in this senior machine learning engineer position. Out of all this, and it's just get exposure. If you are in these meetups, any meetups, if you can present, if there is a project and you can jump in and be the main one putting lines of code, that someone will see that, or even you will see that you have something, and that will give you the confidence in an interview to prove who you are and put you in these high level positions and making good money or whatever are your goals.
I do feel like getting the foot in the door, at least from my experience and talking to a lot of people over the years, is huge. Just getting, I mean, me personally, I had to move to South Dakota, and I worked there for about 1.5 years, but it got me a foot in the door there that I could go back, and I took a job in Vancouver, Washington. So, and then now I'm on another job after that, but it's one of those where if you just get some experience with your foot in the door, and then you know how things work and everything else, you can propel yourself into a position that into the future that you're either looking for or something better for whatever reason, location, money, benefits, whatever it is. But that foot in the door and just learning how things work, I think is huge.
Totally true. I wanted to first of all, we're way past time, but we'll wrap up soon. But I so far I knew it was gonna happen. I knew it because there's just too many heads in this room, including David Molina, who, by the way, I think you were like probably first 10 people to join this meetup group back in the day, something like that. Like you were at the coffee shop, right?
Not the coffee shop, but at the second one. Yeah, when we were meeting at that library. Yeah.
At the library. Oh man. So yeah, so awesome. I love good to see you again, by the way.
Yeah.
I wanted to say that, you know, I started this meetup group because I was trying, I didn't know Python that well. Like this is like 5 years ago. Like I knew Python pretty well. Like I had taken some courses, but not now looking back, I'm like, wow, I didn't know that much. Right. But I used this as almost like experience, maybe selfishly, but it ended up obviously benefiting more people, which is great, which is, you know, was my intention. But it did help me a lot because I've presented 60 plus meetups, right? And like at this point, I'm so comfortable presenting and so comfortable being in front of people. And like in meetings, it shows. In interviews, it shows. Like I'm not nervous at all for interviews now, right? Like I just walk right in. I'm good. So and those first presentations though that I was giving, Al also tapped me to present at a TensorFlow meetup. I was so nervous. I studied so much to present on TensorFlow serving. It was nerve wracking. And I because there's, you know, that was 40, 50 people coming to that meetup at the time. So that was intense experience. And then for my first job, my very first project that I did professionally and got paid for was a data analysis project. And they had me come in and present to the C-suite. They were like, okay, this looks great. We need you to come in on Friday and present this to the CTO, the CFO, and the CEO of this company. And I was like, what? Like I was a stay-at-home dad. Like I was like, I didn't know anything, right? And so I did it. It went over great. They're like, give us a professional summary of this. We'd love to take this to the board. And I'm like, okay, like, I don't know how to write a professional summary, but I acted like I did, right? And they thought, great, this guy knows what he's talking about. They didn't even tell me what the data was. The data was de-identified. It was just numbers to me, but I was just presenting like I knew what I was talking about. And eventually I did know what I was talking about. So anyway, that's my story about this meetup group and kind of my experience. Yeah, as we're wrapping up, right? You know, there's just a lot of smattering of information, and I think it's hopefully been helpful for folks to just hear each of our experiences. But before we go, I guess, are there any last minute questions that we can answer? We could obviously ramble on and on all night long, but just to make sure, if anybody has any lingering things they want to hear in the last maybe few minutes of this that we can address. You can drop it in chat too if you want.
Don't be shy.
Jump on the mic. What's that?
So don't be shy.
Oh no, my video froze. What'd you say?
I said don't be shy.
Oh yeah. Yeah, this is the perfect time to speak up. Exactly what we're talking about. Yeah, good. I'm glad. I'm seeing some of the comments and people seem to be enjoying this. Thoughts about job prospects. Yeah.
And so I have one that's
yeah.
So at the company that I work for, we have this really cool networking opportunity. So like we're all remote, but we still have like 30 minutes that's set aside a week where you're just paired with a random person so that you can just talk to them, get to know them, and you probably work on completely different teams, whatever. So I was talking to this guy who he's getting closer to retirement. So he's in his late 50s. He's been a developer for 30 years. And when he has 3 kids, and when they were growing up, he actively steered them away from tech because he was so concerned at the time that all of the tech jobs, it was like after the first web bubble in the early 2000s. And so he was just like, yo, all of these programming jobs are going to be outsourced overseas. Kids don't go into this. And he's killing himself for making that recommendation to his kids because tech is still huge and alive. And so obviously, yes, it's harder to get a job right now in tech than it was 6 months ago, and layoffs are a thing and hiring freezes are a thing. But I mean, I think that the right way to position it is that, I mean, tech companies are kind of gluttonous. They can print money with advertising, or at least they have been historically. And so they probably were overstaffed for all of the things that they're working on. And this is seeing the pendulum swing the other way. So now they're maybe a little bit understaffed, and it's a line that they will do. But as the economy gets ramping up again, they are going to start hiring more. New startups are going to come along the way, and they're going to be hiring. So, I would definitely we're still hiring at work and other organizations, like since we're in healthcare doesn't really experience recessions. People always need healthcare, and they always need technology that can support all of those things. So, keep learning.
Yeah, I work for a company that also deals with healthcare related stuff. So, and I know personally that we do have a hiring freeze till the end of the year, but at the same time, we are planning on hiring again in 2023. So, and like Bryan mentioned, there's always, especially in the healthcare there's always a industry or, some demand for code automation software with health. So, I mean, at least in that one industry, there's always going to be something, and there's millions of other industries out there that is going to be something similar.
Yeah.
Yep. And all those people that are getting out of the tech companies right now that are being laid off, Wall Street is gobbling them up, right? Because Wall Street is on a big hiring spree right now. Also, one thing that's cool, because my background is in meteorology and climate science, is with I can't remember what it is, the recent act that Congress passed so that we can kind of take away some of the technology that has been outsourced and bring it back overseas. There's like $300 billion. Right. There's tons of money that is supposed to go towards climate startups. And so they're hiring, IT professionals like crazy as well. So, it's just, sure, Google, Amazon, lots of companies are doing layoffs. There might be a little bit of a tech lull for a certain amount of time, but it is going to come back. We're not going to put our smartphones down. We're not going to stop gobbling up the newest technology. It's going to keep going. So
Yeah.
I would definitely recommend it as a skill to learn. And I have to drop, but
Okay. Thanks, Bryan.
thanks, everyone.
See you, dude. Yeah.
Yeah, I just
Oh, go ahead,
well,
David.
yeah, I would like to add to that technology is not going anywhere. We know that.
Yeah.
It kind of leads our lives. And the
Yeah.
systems that are cutting edge right now and we are working on, they will be legacy in a few. So there will be the people, they will needing the people to implement the new ones or support the ones that are currently running. So plenty of opportunities. I would say these times is to study. Yeah, these companies are gonna start hiring later. It's just a perfect opportunity to wrap up and get all the knowledge in whatever we're interested in, and the opportunities will be there.
Yeah,
it's not going anywhere. And that thing about automation and AI is gonna let us without jobs, that's a lie. I mean, companies are moving so slow.
Yeah, so slow, dude.
So companies are
they
like,
think
I
they're
don't
gonna
care
use
about your AI. Can you fix my Excel file? So don't worry about that.
No, it's so funny because everybody thinks everybody's so advanced. The reality is everything you see that's advanced is at the very, very, very top companies, right? The Googles and the Amazons and the Microsofts. The rest of the companies, some of them aren't even you. They're still, I work in a consulting firm where we talk to companies all the time I work in the AI practice, and most companies don't even know how to get started. They don't even know they're just at the beginning of even exploring what they can do with their data in ML and all that stuff, right? There's still so much, if you want to use an investment term, so much alpha out there, right? Like there's so much opportunity. And I think that going back to that question, I wanted to say about the market, how I look at it is, I look at it just how I look at any market, right? There's bear and bull cycles, right, in markets. And right now we're in this bear market, right, in terms of tech or in general, but especially in tech. But one thing that you can always count on too is companies realized over COVID that they need to automate. So if you can get into those types of jobs, like that's actually could be recession proof, right? Because they had to lay people. It was too expensive for them to keep people, so they wanted to figure out how they could get those, as sad as it is, right? But how to automate a lot of their processes. So it can be recession proof to be in a data role. But think about it as when during a bear market, any investors out during a bear market, what are you doing? You try to buy cheap, right? Right now, everything is down. So if you study now, in 6 months, you'll be ready when they ramp back up. And that's, I think, I'm just repeating what everybody else has said, but I totally think that that's true. So spend the bear market learning, growing your skills, doing as much as humanly possible to position yourself well for that next bull cycle, because it's nuts when it's happening. like it is a feeding frenzy when they start hiring again. Like they can't stop hiring people, right? I wanted to address this question about junior cloud engineers and developers. I wouldn't say that there's, like, for junior developers, for sure, there's place for junior developers. For cloud engineers a very specific role. I think that everyone should learn the cloud. I don't care what role you're in. Software engineers, web developers, everyone needs to learn the cloud, because the cloud is where all companies want to be if they're not there already or on their way, right? They're trying to get to the cloud. There's lots of reasons for that. We have a video series on our YouTube channel I did about the cloud in general. I've done talks for the Tech Academy on the cloud. If you're interested, I could do another talk about the cloud, specifically Google Cloud, for another talk. But it's so important that you know that stuff, because it is where everything is going. Everybody wants to be in the cloud. So again, it holds true. It doesn't matter what cloud you learn. You could learn AWS, you could learn Azure, you could learn Google Cloud. Just what you do is you go to the documentation, you test out their code, you build some products. They give you $300 in credits when you sign up to any one of the cloud services. Just pick one, learn it really well, potentially try to get one of the lower level certifications. Companies want cloud. So there's always going to be room for that. That is, as much as it seems like you're behind, you're actually right in the beginning of the cloud migration. Like so many companies are still only on-prem, or they've migrated their on-prem to the cloud, which is not how you're supposed to do it. They say they're cloud native, but really all they're doing is the same things they were doing on-prem, except in the cloud. That's not cloud native. They still have a long way to go. So definitely 100% learn the cloud. Said, what are your thoughts on standing out in the market without having a degree? What can you, Albert? Does that mean a degree in general, or just a degree in computer science? That would be my question on that. You can jump on the mic if you want, just to.
I feel like a degree in general always helps. I'm a business information systems degree, so that's 85% of understanding and business processes, how to make them more efficient. And then the 15% was coding, and I enjoyed the coding part, and that's why I wanted to go down that path. So I think any degree shows companies in general that you were able to, carry out, the 4-year degree or 2-year degree, that kind of stuff from that standpoint. But without a degree, it's possible to get a job if you have a portfolio, working on projects, stuff like that. It's definitely easy, I would say, if you have the CS degree, but it's definitely not a necessity to get a job.
Yeah, not at all.
There are careers that, if you like them, you just go for it. Just don't go in this just for money, because maybe I'm seeing a lot of my colleagues really frustrated because they just took, this is easy money, and the reality is not. You have to study a lot. It's like kind of like being a doctor. You never stop studying.
Yeah.
So that could be a nightmare for a lot of people, and then the money is not paying off. So if you have a career that you like, you can do it, and on the side learn how to program. Programming is a basic, like math or any other class that is really basic for life nowadays.
Yeah.
So you can mix both. In my career, I applied a lot of the concepts from my industrial engineering in my coding daily days. Like for me, my logistics is okay. How would I move this data? My factory is now a cloud tool to do ETLs and transform the data. So all that I'm not applying in manufacturing, maybe in a real world with real pieces, I'm applying the same concepts into this data world. So
yeah, that is definitely that's definitely a good point. To try to learn on the side to figure out if this is something you want to do is great, because I've heard from a lot of people that have just tried to learn how to code on their own that you're going to get stuck, and you have to figure stuff out, and it could take a while sometimes, and people can get frustrated that it can take a long time. So patience is something that you will need to get used to, and if that's something that will frustrate you constantly, then this might not be for you from that standpoint. So there's a lot of skills that you can learn without the degree for sure to figure out if this is the path that you want to go.
Yeah. And we're so far over time. I just want to add that you can do degrees online now, even bachelor's degrees. Right? They're starting to offer bachelor's degrees online, or professional certificates or anything like that. And those play these days. Like a lot of the companies like Google are offering programs for people. Once they finish that program, they're almost guaranteed an interview.
right? And these are like IT and like different things like that, but they found there was not enough skills out there. So companies are actually starting to put programs out there and accept candidates without college degrees. Does it mean it's easy to get? Not necessarily, but the opportunities are out there. If you look,
I think we live in
places like Coursera and edX.
Yeah, I think we live in amazing times. I mean,
Yeah.
all the knowledge is just right there. I mean, even if you want a class for these fancy universities,
Yeah,
some of them are in YouTube, and it's like
I studied
crazy.
at MIT and UCSD. Like I
Yeah.
literally, you know what I mean?
You see people spending thousands of dollars to go to those classes, and you just click in your Google and you have them, and you can repeat them as many times as you want. So
Correct.
these are amazing times to get stuck. I mean,
Oh yeah.
you get stuck if
great.
it's because you want to get stuck, because the
Yep.
time that we are spending in Instagram just scrolling up and down, or Twitter, you could be learning something,
Yes.
and getting to that position, whatever you want.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to cut it off there before we get on another tangent, or we can for so long. I would love to keep talking about this because this is my favorite topic to talk about, is just helping people, answering questions, and but I'm glad everybody found this useful. Thanks for all your participation, your questions. Maybe we can do this again at some point, maybe with a different panel, maybe with the same panel, I don't know. But I appreciate everybody jumping in, David and Bryan, who's not here, but in spirit now. So everybody have a great night. We'll post this on our YouTube channel eventually. But have a great night. Thanks for coming, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, YouTube channel is Portland Python Pirates. I don't have the link right in front of me. Cool. All right. See you, everybody.
Bye-bye.